What if you could build a wall to stop a desert? 11 countries just tried a wall of trees 5,000 miles long. What happened next surprised everyone. It starts at the Atlantic coast of Senegal and ends at the Red Sea in Djibouti. That is roughly the distance from Paris all the way to Beijing. They call it the Great Green Wall, and its mission sounds impossible. Stop the world's largest hot desert, the Sahara, from swallowing everything south of it. To understand why anyone would fight a desert with trees, you need to see what life looks like on the Sahara's southern edge, a region called the Sahel. The Sahel is home to hundreds of millions of people, and most of them depend on one fragile thing: thin soil that still remembers how to grow food. But decades of drought, overgrazing and clearing turned huge stretches of that soil into dust, and every year more farmland quietly dies under the moving sand. Lake Chad, once one of Africa's largest lakes, has lost about 90% of its water since the 1960s. 30 million people depend on what remains. When the land dies, everything follows. Harvests fail, families move, young men get recruited by armed groups, and entire villages simply pack up and disappear. So in 2007, the African Union approved a plan that sounded like pure science fiction: grow a belt of trees across the whole continent. The numbers are staggering. Restore 100 million hectares of dead land, lock away 250 million tons of carbon, and create 10 million green jobs. 11 countries signed up, from Senegal to Ethiopia to Djibouti, each promising to grow its own section of the wall through some of Earth's harshest terrain. Senegal moved first, planting over 12 million drought-resistant acacia trees, species tough enough to survive on almost no rain and still feed animals and people. These trees are working machines. Their roots hold the soil together, their leaves feed livestock, and their gum can even be harvested and sold for cash. Ethiopia alone reported planting billions of seedlings, and satellite images slowly began to show something remarkable: stubborn patches of green appearing where the maps showed only brown. For a while, it looked like humanity was actually winning its first war against a desert, and then the real numbers started coming in. By 2020, roughly a decade and a half in, independent reviews found only about 4% of the promised land had actually been restored. Even worse, in some early planting zones, up to 80% of the trees were dead, planted with ceremony, photographed, and then left to dry out. It turns out you cannot just stick a forest into a desert. A tree with nobody to water it in the Sahel is basically expensive firewood. There was another surprise. Scientists found the Sahara isn't actually marching south like an invading army. The real killer was how the land was being used. Money vanished into reports and conferences, borders shifted priorities, and the world quietly filed the Great Green Wall under beautiful ideas that failed. But out in Niger, farmers had been running a quiet experiment of their own, one that would completely change what the wall was supposed to be. Instead of planting anything, they protected the tree stumps already sleeping under their fields, pruning and guarding them until entire forests literally regrew from the roots. Using this method, Niger's farmers brought back around 200 million trees across 5 million hectares without planting a single seedling and at almost zero cost. Other farmers dig thousands of small crescent-shaped pits that catch the rare rains, turning a single storm into weeks of moisture locked inside the soil. The project quietly reinvented itself. No longer one solid wall of trees, but a mosaic of restored farms, grasslands and woodlands stitched across the Sahel. And the world took notice. In 2021, international backers pledged over $19 billion to accelerate the wall through the rest of this decade. Where communities own the land and the trees, the green is holding. Millions of hectares are already back in production, feeding people who once planned to leave. So the Great Green Wall probably will not look like the poster. A neat green ribbon, visible from space, cutting the continent in half. Instead, it is becoming something arguably bigger, a complete rewrite of how an entire region farms, waters, and survives on the edge of a desert. The wall was never really about trees. It was about people deciding a desert would not write their future. If this story surprised you, subscribe.